It can be really hard to get your home sold in a market like this one. Even after you've worked really hard to get your home ready for sale, you've done all the little minor fix-ups and decluttering that you needed to do. The photos look great, and you've even priced lower than the last sale on your street. But still, you can't sell. Well, the problem probably is not your property, and it's not the market either. The problem is that you do not have access to the information required to properly understand what the market's doing right now. And that's not your fault. If you don't have the information required to get sold, you're either one, not listening to your agent, or two, maybe you have hired the wrong agent for the job because they may not even know how to look at the data correctly and interpret it to then communicate their findings to you in a way that enables you to make the right choices when putting your property on the market for sale. Sure, there is a chance that your agent is sharing with you these 6 data points that I'm going to talk about in today's video, and then you're still choosing to sabotage your own sale. That might be possible. But in my experience of selling real estate over the last 15 plus years here in Greater Vancouver, most often sellers like you only price and present their properties poorly in the marketplace because they don't have the necessary information required to make the right choices. But by the end of this video, you will know exactly what 6 data points to ask for from your agent. Or if you're looking for an agent to help you here in my hometown of Surrey or anywhere in Greater Vancouver, you can book a call with me using the link in the description below. Then just subscribe to the channel to stay up to date on the market and click the like button because, well, thank you. Thank you so much. Now let's start off with the first data point that you need to know to get your home sold, and that is active listings. Active listings are your competition. If there are a lot of them on the market, buyers, and therefore eventually your buyer, will have lots of other options to pick from when searching for their next home. For example, right now, many areas across Canada, particularly the major areas of Vancouver and Toronto, are experiencing record high levels of active listings on the market. This isn't always a bad thing for sellers because too many actives on the market is only a bad thing if there are very few of the second data point, which is sales. Active listings are your competition, as I said, but sales, on the other hand, are an indication of actual market value as a result of a buyer and a seller on the open market coming to terms on the price and other terms in the contract to facilitate a sale. So if you have lots of actives and lots of sales, that's not a bad thing for you when you're selling. Very few actives and lots of sales is a very good thing when you're selling, but bad for buyers. And of course, if you have a lot of actives and very few sales, well, that's often what gets referred to as a bad market. But you can't make a good decision on pricing your home for sale if you don't have the recent sold data to show you what your eventual sale price should be. And then the third data point, and this might be one of the most important, is a combination of point 1 and 2. We call this months of inventory. This is indeed likely the most important stat that you need to understand to find out where you stand in the current market. Months of inventory is simply the amount of active listings on the market at any given time divided by the number of sales over the last 30 days. This then gives you a simplified number that represents if no more units came to the market for sale, this is how long it would take or how many months it would take to sell out of all of the current stock. The lower that number is, the more upward pressure there is on pricing. The higher the number is, prices will come down and at an accelerating pace. So 0 to 3 months of supply pushes prices up, which is good if you already own real estate, and that's why we call it a good market, otherwise known as a seller's market. 4 to 5 months of supply is very balanced. Prices are stable. Buyers have stuff to pick from, but also you can get your property sold without too much headache. And 6 months or more, really 7 months or more, is where prices start to decline. And as that number grows, prices drop more and faster. Understanding months of inventory makes the decision much easier if you should price accurately, get optimistic and price high, or if you should be pricing under the recent sales because the market is declining. The next data point, and one that is a little bit more forward-looking, is something that we call new listings. New listings will stack on top of current active listings to form next month's active listings. If the new listings coming to the market this month are greater than they were last month, the market is slowing. And then you can also compare this to the same time last year to see what the market's done since then. And if new listings are lower, well, then less people are coming to the market. And eventually the sales will chew into the active listings and the market will pick up again. This is a stat that my board, the Fraser Valley Real Estate Board, does a very good job of communicating daily to their membership. So if your agent is a member of the Fraser Valley Board, they should be able to answer the number of new listings to the market this month very easily just by logging into their MLS system at the beginning of their workday. Number 5 is days on market. Days on market is calculated from the day the property hits the MLS system and goes on the market until the day it sells or expires. Often, the areas that I work, days on market of properties that actually sell still average between 14 and 28 days on the market, meaning that a good property is still selling within the first 2 to 4 weeks. And this is important for you to know as a seller, because if you are 5 to say 9 weeks on the market and not sold, well, I'm sorry to tell you, you are overpriced and it's time for a price reduction. I also like to track days on market from the last price reduction on a property because, again, of the ones that sell, their offer usually comes pretty quickly. To illustrate this point a little further, recently I did a wide open search around my office here in North Delta to see how many properties sold and within which time frame. There were a ton of listings on the marketplace and very few sales. But of the ones that did sell, the longest it took a single property to sell was 34 days. There was one more at 25 days, and then the other 8 or so sales all happened between 6 and 18 days on market. This is why that in most scenarios that you should consider reducing your price every 21 days if you're not getting a lot of showings and serious offers. And the last data point that you need to understand is something called the list to sale ratio. List to sale ratio is just simply a percentage of the listing price that a home is on the market for compared to the actual selling price. For example, if you're asking $1 million for your property and you sell for $975, your list to sale ratio is 97.5%. In most markets, the list to sale ratio will usually average between 96 and 98%. So if the average list to sale ratio in your area is 99% or maybe even over 100, your market is doing quite well and it's probably quite hot. If your average list to sale price is 95% or lower, your market's going through a pretty tough time. But then if the market is so bad, why doesn't the list to sale price plunge much lower? Well, it could, but in reality, most sellers are not willing to accept the lowball offers, even if those lowball offers are actual market value. And way fewer buyers than you think are willing to write substantially below the asking price, often because they don't want to feel like they're wasting their time or they don't want to offend the seller. So they simply move on to something else that's priced better. But this is also a metric you can use to ask your agent about their success. What is their list to sale ratio compared to the current market? If it's high, it could be a sign that they are a very good negotiator, or that they are more accurately pricing their properties and educating their clients. But beware, many agents these days are actively encouraging their clients to price their properties unrealistically low at a price that the seller never plans to accept in the first place. Then when the underpriced property sells at 10% over asking, well, they're just padding the stats for the agent, trying to get a quick sale. And we're seeing this a lot. It became popular a few years ago, and unfortunately, a lot of agents are still using this marketing plan. But if their list to sale ratio is a lot lower than average, well, then you likely have a poor negotiator on your hands. Or they could be giving their clients terrible advice on how to position themselves in the market. And in reality, you should likely use these 6 data points to quiz any agents that you're considering hiring to sell your home in order to see how knowledgeable they are about the current market. And then if the agent you're interviewing doesn't know what you're talking about or what you're asking for, maybe you had better book a call with us using the link in the description below so you can hire me and my team to see how we can help. And if you would like to learn more about hiring a team of real estate agents opposed to a single agent, watch this video right now. Because teams and single agents both have their pros and cons, and you should probably know what they are.